Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. As always, we're going to take a look at the newest release from Chris Reeve Knives, and this is the Chris Reeve Knives Impinda. And this is a rather timely release, jumping in on the popularity of slip joints and perhaps modern slip joints. I think it was Tim Reeve, Chris Reeve's son, who joked that this is the second time they've actually hit a trend on time. The first being, obviously, the frame lock that was developed or invented by Chris Reeve, or at least he's credited with it. So, anyways, we're going to take a look at this one in a bit more detail. Now, let's just start off. I'm going to ask you guys 3 questions to see if this is a knife for you. First question is, do you like slip joints, i.e. non-locking knives? Second question, and if the answer is yes, then let's keep going. If not, then perhaps watch something else already. Second question is, do you like modern slip joints, ones with perhaps pocket clips and that are serviceable? You can take them apart, clean them. They're not pinned together. So if the answer to that question is yes, then let's keep going. Third question is, are you okay paying Chris Reeve prices for Chris Reeve quality? Obviously, Chris Reeve knives have never been inexpensive. This one is no exception. I believe they're around $450 right now, assuming you can even find them in stock at dealers, which is going to be quite a challenge at this, at this present moment. And we're in March of 2019 here. So again, if you like slip joints, awesome. If you like modern slip joints that you can service, awesome, we'll keep going. If you're okay paying Chris Reeve prices for Chris Reeve quality, then perhaps this is a knife for you. So the Impinda, again, it's a modern slip joint utilizing, a lot of the standard cues of Chris Reeve knives. We've got the blasted handles, we have S35VN. This one does have a milled pocket clip, which is a nice feature, and it is a slip joint. So let's talk about it in more detail. And it's kind of an interesting story with this one, or at least I think so. So there's a story that's as old as time, and it's the story of the prodigal son returning, having left the family business, not really wanting to take part in it, following his passion, spending a few years pursuing music in the music industry. Obviously, Tim Reeve came back to Chris Reeve Knives, now that his father has kind of stepped away a bit, and so this is the first knife that he has introduced under the Chris Reeve line that was essentially his project or his baby. So that is, it's kind of an interesting story. Tim has his own podcast called Think Twice, Cut Once, which is not, officially affiliated with Chris Reeve Knives, but it's his podcast, and he's kind of alluded to the story a couple of times in various episodes, but perhaps at some point he'll tell the full story of going back to the company and also the development of this knife. So anyways, this one was essentially released under Tim Reeve, and it was an idea that Tim had in mind, but Tim credits Rick Hindrer with actually pushing him to develop this knife. And to start the project, which is again the modern slip joint here, Tim enlisted the help of someone that a lot of you are familiar with, and that is Bill Harsey. And Tim said it was a natural fit when I was talking to him, and I didn't quite understand what that meant or why. And you really have to know the history of Chris Reeve Knives going back to the early 1990s, which I obviously don't know very well. But Bill Harsey was kind of there from day one. Apparently, he hand ground a lot of the first Sebenzas that were created. So this is something, designed in conjunction with Bill Harsey. If you can see, it does say Harsey on the inside. And then, what does it say on this side? I can't even remember at the moment. Oh, Idaho made. So they took those stamps that have a lot of times been around the pivot on the outside, and they put them inside for a very clean look, just the simple Chris Reeve logo right here. So that looks very, very nice, well done, very clean. Anyhow, so Tim Reeve enlisted Bill Harsey, natural fit. He developed this knife, and it has a couple neat features that we'll talk about. And then Tim took it to his dad, assuming that it was going to be ripped to pieces, as everyone knows that Chris Reeve has always been a very vocal and honest individual, but apparently he said his old man gave him a thumbs up on the project, and that's what we have today. So let's talk about specs real quick. So again, it is a blade length of about 2.5 inches here, or 3.25 inches. Handle length of about 4 inches. Does weigh in right around 3.4 ounces. And the blade steel is, of course, S35VN. And if you know Chris Reeve knives, well, Chris Reeve helped develop S35VN in conjunction with Crucible. So, you know, obviously that's a thing, and they're going to be using that steel. So here it is next to the Kershaw Dividend, very similar in size, next to the Parrot 2. And, of course, let's grab the older brother. This is a, let's try that again. This is a Sebenza 21 large with carbon fiber. It's a Blade HQ exclusive, so there we are, just keeping it in the family. Alright, so some of the unique features that this knife has, I'd say probably the most unique is what is, I believe it's patented, but it is a tension differential opening. And I'm going to move the 21 out of the way here real quick and show you guys kind of what that means. But essentially they developed a pivot system, or where it's kind of oblong shaped. So anyways, when you open the knife, it has a pull of around maybe 1 pound to open it. And then when you close the knife, it's actually more difficult to close than it is to open. And so it's about 1 pound to open and about 5 pounds to close. Now the interesting thing is I didn't really notice a difference at first, because I'd open it up and then I'd close it, then I'd open it, and then I'd close it. And what I came to realize is when I close slip joints, I use my full palm, which is obviously a lot stronger than just a 2-finger pinch. So if you want to feel the tension differential opening versus closing, open it with 2 fingers and then close it with 2 fingers so you can actually feel the difference. So again, a very unique and interesting system. I think it was Bill Harsey who developed it, but I could be wrong. Anyways, so that's certainly one of the most unique features of this knife. It does utilize a captured pivot, and again, it's you know, standard. I believe it was Torx hardware on this one. Maybe it was an Allen wrench. I can't remember. It comes with the tools, so you know, don't worry about it. The tools are included. You're obviously set for maintenance and care. It does utilize the standard phosphor bronze washers that have the holes in them, so you can, you know, get the grease down in there and it'll capture it and retain the grease on the phosphor bronze washers. It does not have a half stop, so full open and close. I should probably let you guys hear the sound here, if I can shut up for just a minute. So that is the walk and talk, as I guess some people call it. Perhaps it doesn't apply since this is a modern slip joint. But again, the other interesting thing is the fact that we have a 3D milled clip here instead of the standard titanium spring clip that you know, is Chris Reeve Knives is certainly well known for. So ergonomically, very, very, very comfortable knife. I think it feels fantastic in hand. Again, I wear an XL glove, and I'm just barely getting all 4 fingers on there, so very comfortable. I like the way it feels in hand quite a bit. Let's see what else. It feels really light in the pocket. You know, it only weighs around 3.4 ounces, and so I've clipped this thing onto slacks. I've clipped it onto jeans. The pocket clip works very well with both. So give you guys kind of an up close here. Centering is perfect, and it's hollow ground on the blade, you know, just as with all the other Chris Reeve knives, so you have to excuse the finger smudges. But it's certainly a nice little workhorse. It feels good in hand. It's perhaps a little bit, as far as balance goes, it's a little bit butt heavy, but in the hand it balances well, but if you're just going to put your finger here, it's going to fall towards the back. So I don't know if I'm going to show you guys that. Yeah, it just falls. Alright, Let's see, any other up-close shots I can give you guys. Now, one thing you'll notice here is the spine has not been rounded as, as is characteristic of a lot of the Chris Reeve knives, but it does give it a very clean flow and transition. I think it looks nice. I don't really think, obviously the rounded spine doesn't really do anything from a functional standpoint. So yeah, let's see what else do we want to cover here. Overall, I think it's a really interesting knife. I like it. It's well made. I think it has a timeless quality to it. I think this knife will certainly endure for many years to come. And I think that, it hit the market at exactly the right time for a modern slip joint. And I think that trend is kind of here to stay. A lot of people have been enjoying, kind of a back to basics type of approach with design and, knife technology as it is. So, I also have to say that, in terms of bias, I really liked him. I think he's a good guy. I'm excited to see where he's going to take Chris Reeve knives. One change is we've seen a lot more really unique show special builds that have been really interesting to see, with, Tonto blades and bacon Damascus and maybe some like Moku tie inlays. So if you're a longtime Chris Reeve fan, there have been some really unique knives coming out lately that, I'm sure many people want in their collections. Despite, again, a really high price tag, they seem to be selling very, very well. If there's anything that I don't like on this knife, it really comes down to my same complaint with a lot of Chris Reeve knives, is just the blasted finish. And I talked to Tim about that, and it basically, when you're going through and you're making knives or any machine components, there are step-by-step processes that you take to ensure the quality and the fit and the precision. And so he said, maybe somewhere down the line they could incorporate, perhaps stonewash handles instead of the blasted handles. But he said they would have to change up all of their processes in order to ensure that, the lines and the machining stay super clean and they're not just washed out by, just dropping it in a tumbler, essentially. They would have to redo a lot of their processes. So, if you want to, you can always send one of these off to a knife modder and they'll just stonewash the handles for you. Will you lose some of the super clean machining? Yeah, absolutely. There'll be something gained and something lost. So, that's my only thing, is I'm not really a fan of the bead blasted. It does pick up a lot of wear very quickly. And I know that some people really, really love that. They love the quote-unquote snail trails that, these blasted handles get. So anyways, that's not a make or break in terms of quality or the fit or the finish or the utility. That's purely just a tactile and aesthetic, difference between my preferences and how these are made. Now, again, my only challenge to Tim, assuming he ever watches this, would be on his podcast to cover those two things that I mentioned earlier. I'd really love to see him do a podcast on the development of this knife from start to finish, the entire story, what challenges they ran into, and between the prototypes. And anyways, I'd love to hear the whole story. The other would be to have him do a podcast talking about leaving the company, going off doing his own thing, and then finally coming back to the company, which has his name on it. So I think those would be two very, very interesting stories that would really add a lot of dimension to some of the changes coming up with the company, and especially with this knife. So anyways, really well done, Tim. I think that this knife was the right knife at the right time, the right place, and it's very, very well made. I often see people talk about things like, I'd really like Chris Reeve knives to make a flipper or something super modern, but I think that would be a huge mistake. You can't deviate too far from the Chris Reeve DNA if you're going to make a new knife. If you do, all the machining and the years of practice and perfecting the current knives, it'll just kind of be thrown out the window and you'll lose a lot of fans along the way. So this was the right knife at the right time in the right place, and it has the DNA. It doesn't deviate too far from, you know, the Chris Reeve heritage, and I think it's a fantastic piece. So anyways, keep up the good work. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Comments or questions, let me know. More of these are supposed to be hitting dealers in the near future, but as all things, we'll see what happens. Take care.